And so, thank you all for banding together with me over the last several movies so we could save the universe.
I don't say this often, but you're welcome, Superman.
Aw, man. Who knew Bats was such a softie?
Wow. What a wonderful world I live in, where there are consistently high-quality live-action DC Comics feature films with a cohesive overarching narrative and absolutely no cast members who have ever participated in any sort of heinous criminal activity. Hi, I woke up. We've been covering the DC Animated Universe timeline for years, but we've also done timeline videos on other DC film franchises, and even the Freddy and Jason movies, and, Minions. So don't go telling me this video is off-brand. The series of connected films that began in 2013 with Man of Steel and is now coming to a close in 2023's The Flash, otherwise known to fans erroneously yet perpetually as the DC Extended Universe, yeah, some journalist just called it that once and then everyone ran with it for no reason, has been quite the adventure. I'm not really going to go into my personal opinions here, nor am I going to spend any time on whatever behind-the-scenes bullshit may have happened. I'm just here today to try my best to lay out when all these movies, and one TV show, happened in relation to each other and the greater universe. Because why not? Building timelines is fun. But elephant in the room, we all know how disjointed the creations of these movies and one TV show were, so trying to mush them together into one big timeline is gonna be kind of a neat game almost. It could be the most clean-cut thing you've ever seen, or it could be a disaster. Now you may be thinking, how is this difficult at all, James? The DCEU is very straightforward. Well, we gotta decide something at the start here. Are we just making a list of what order to watch the movies in? In that case, or are we trying to figure out when everything in this universe happened? Why take the easy route when you could just let this consume you for months so that every calendar and clock you see for the rest of your life will make you wish you had written it down in case you need that information later once you're released from Arkham Asylum? What will constitute a successful DCEU timeline? Well, for me, it's knowing at least the year every movie and one TV show takes place, if not the month, if not the week, if not the day, and if we can figure out the main characters' ages and/or birth dates. Anything else will be just a dash of hot sauce. Not too much, Sal. I want to taste the cheese. I've seen all of these, but I've never looked at them this closely before, so it'll be quite the something. At the time of this recording, I have not yet seen The Flash. But you'll be coming with me at the end to go figure out how it all fits and what ridiculous damage it may or may not do to the timeline we've already... One last thing, we get references to a bunch of wars or other events in actual human history throughout all these movies and one TV show, so since almost none of them except World War I have any real bearing on timeline placements, let's just get this bit out of the way.
The formation of early dynastic Egypt, the founding of Rome, the Peloponnesian War, Mayan Civilization, Song Dynasty, bubonic plague, the American Indian War, the Industrial Revolution, Lewis and Clark, the Kansas-Nebraska Act, the American Civil War, the eruption of Krakatoa, World War I, the stock market crash, World War II, the Cold War, the Roswell incident, the space race, the Vietnam War, the Cuban Missile Crisis, John F. Kennedy's assassination, Martin Luther King Jr.'s assassination, the moon landing, the first 39 U.S. presidents, and September 11th.
So, now that we've finished going through the class syllabus, allow me to present in all of its glory
Man of Steel.
Just kidding. We begin with Man of Steel, which wasn't ever really intended to launch an entire cinematic universe. Fun fact, Ryan Reynolds' Green Lantern was, and thus isn't exactly brimming with timeline clues. Man of Steel opens on Krypton. Superman is born, Zod's doing bad guy stuff, they send off baby Superman, Zod and his cronies are sent to the Phantom Zone, the planet explodes. But there's absolutely nothing to tell us when this happens, so for now I'm just gonna note down Superman is born, Krypton goes boom, and hopefully we'll come back to it. The rest of the movie? Well, in typical Christopher Nolan-y fashion, Man of Steel is presented pretty non-linearly. We get a flashback of Clark being all, "Oh, Jesus Christ, I have superpowers," in elementary school, a couple other childhood flashbacks where he saves a school bus from sinking in the river, learns about his baby space pod, and gets bullied by some jocks, and another where he's seemingly still in high school based on his PE t-shirt, but now he's played by Henry Cavill, so that's quite the glow-up. The present-day stuff leads to everyone meeting up at a big ancient Kryptonian spaceship in the Arctic, and And here's where we get our only solid timeline placements for this movie. A June 2013 date on Lieutenant Gaeta's computer screen that refers to NASA's original discovery of the ship, and November 28th, 2013 on Lois Lane's camera, which hilariously switches to saying September 25th, 2013 in the very next shot. Now, I've worked with cameras, I'm working with one right now, and I can tell you the software on these things screws up the dates all the time. So all I can say is the fact we get 3 2013 drops in this movie tells me it's probably 2013. Superman and his hollow dad talk about Krypton's history, which is full of centuries this and thousands of years that. Not super helpful. But we find out Krypton was doing great for a while. Then their bodies stopped having babies for some reason, which wasn't great. Lois and Clark talk near Jonathan Kent's gravestone. Ah yeah, he died in the PE shirt flashback. What a scene. Which tells us he lived from 1951 to 1997. So now we've got a for sure year on at least that flashback. Hey, I'll be real, we can guess the bus one was in 1992 because of the bus's license plate expiration date. Yeah, I was looking hard for this stuff, okay man? You got a problem with this? Later, when Zod arrives on Earth and is all, "Give me Superman, please, or I'll kill you," his broadcast interrupts a college football game. Luckily, someone already took care of the hard part for me. Thanks, Mark Dent of the Brew House. Your name definitely doesn't rhyme with Clark Kent. So we know this is a rerun or a taped game or something because it originally aired September 6th, 2008. Soon after, Superman's taken in, and he says,
"Been here for 33 years, Doctor."
So assuming our 2013 year for the movie is still right, then subtracting 33 gets us a year for his super birthday, 1980. Eventually, Zod and Superman have their big Act 3 Super Smash Bros. Brawl in what becomes known as the Black Zero event, based on the name of Zod's big jellyfish ship. And that's pretty much all the notable timeline stuff we get for this movie. Now, yes, I did skip over a few tiny things like all the historical dates on Clark's elementary school chalkboard, or how we can just barely hear Chrissy the bar girl tell Lois that Clark worked there for a few months. But for the sake of blasting through everything I want to blast through, I'm going to stick to the big landmarks. The full things later, I want to take you through the fun stuff, baby! Speaking of which, I didn't tell you before, but a Man of Steel prequel comic actually came out about a month before the movie, on my 22nd birthday, which shows us a little more of pre-exploded Krypton and features Supergirl as part of a Kryptonian expedition that crash lands on Earth, the very ship we see in the movie. And then there's these puppies. The novelization is glorious. In several chapters, we get exact dates for all the flashback scenes. Grade school X-ray vision fiasco, September 1988. Jocks messing with him, March 1992. Bus saving, October 1992. An exact month for 1997's Pa Kent tornado time, April. We even get an extra flashback ultimately cut from the film where the Kents take a little baby Clark to the hospital and he cries so loud that all the glass in the building shatters. That's May 1981. It just makes me so happy that we get so many precise dates. Or at least it would if not for the fact that, yes, in October 92, Jonathan shows Clark the Kryptonian pod in the barn, but in March 92, 7 months earlier, Clark thinks back to when Jonathan showed him the pod in the barn in the future? That's so funny. I guess we just flip the 2 months or just say both are nebulously in 1992. I emailed the author, Greg Cox, to see if he could explain away this problem, but he never answered my email, or my Facebook message making sure he got my email, or my second Facebook message making sure he got my first Facebook message. What, Greg, do you have more important things to do or something? Oh, he just messaged me back. He doesn't remember. Yeah, that makes sense. You know what else is funny? Clark is said to be 9 in 1988 and 13 in 1992, which is like a whole year different from what we thought with 2013 minus 33 years. So maybe there was some kind of wibbly-wobbly, timey-wiminess going on with baby Superman in the pod from Krypton? Well, you know, it's funny I should mention that because there was! The book tells us so! Jor-El and Lara look at Earth on their pin art computers just like in the movie, but they comment about how there's an ice age going on. Our ice age started as long as 2.4 million years ago, all the way through 11,500 years ago. That's a little bit of a gap, but it's all we got. So now we know that Superman is born and Krypton goes bye-bye somewhere in that humongous period of time forever ago. And then, because by the time it reached its destination, millennia would have passed, I guess we just don't really worry about it. Clark is roughly 33 in Man of Steel, but his ages 0 to 1 are a little messy. Okay, I'm gonna pull the Tears of Canonicity card. Essentially, we've always steered our timelining ship toward anything supplementary to the film, like a novelization or guidebook or comic or what have you, as being lower on the totem pole, so to speak, in terms of what is canon to the universe at large. AKA, the movie is king, everything else is just helpful if it's helpful and can be ignored if it's not. So these kerfuffles with Superman's age can pretty much be swept under the rug. It's the old, not every writer talks to every other writer, so things will get messed up sometimes dealio. An actually helpful piece of info the book gives us is a throwaway remark about a cool autumn wind blowing when the FBI comes and nabs Lois Lane. Autumn ends November 30th, so that's our furthest out point for the present day of the film. The novel also tells us the oil rig scene is in October, so since Clark started working at the bar after the oil rig blowed up, and Bar Girl said he'd been working there for a few months, we can assume that this was October 2012. Any other points of interest in this book are just rough ages of characters, like Martha Kent being in her late 20s during the baby hospital scene, and Professor Jurassic Park 2 being in his 60s. The art book gives us 1661 as the founding of Metropolis, and the early years just shows us more scenes of Kid Clark growing up and learning he can do cool stuff. Cows. So with all that being said, we're looking at this for our primary Man of Steel timeline on its own. This is one of the most flashback-heavy movies of them all, so while things start to intertwine and get a little freaky from this point on, it is a bit more straightforward. Well, okay, that's a lie. A beautiful, beautiful lie. This bad boy starts off with resident bad boy Ben Affleck racing through Metropolis during the Black Zero event, looking real mad. And then we get this super nice 18 months later title card. So if we're still of the mind that that happened in roughly autumn of 2013, so September, October, November, then fast forwarding 18 months gets us to March, April, or May of 2015. Pretty good start. The scene we open back up on after the time jump shows divers discovering kryptonite in the Indian Ocean. And after a decent amount of the movie passes, Ben Affleck says,
"The first sample big enough to mean something turned up in the Indian Ocean 3 months ago."
So, okay, I guess we're now 21 months past the Black Zero event, so June, July, or August of 2015. This invitation to Lex Luthor's party pretty blatantly says November 1st. That was a couple scenes ago. So, what? Now we know BVS is primarily in November, and that's compounded on later when Wonder Woman checks her email and her computer says it's November 12th. Subtracting 21 months from that gets us February 2014. 3 months later than we thought for the Kryptonian attack. But, I mean, Tears of Canonicity, these movies and one TV show are always going to take canonical precedence over any supplementary material. And if the movie says it's November and it's also 18 plus 3 months after Man of Steel, that seems pretty trustworthy. What have we got in Man of Steel that goes against that again? A cool autumn wind from the novel that wasn't written by the same person as the movie, and shoddy Lois Lane camera dates that already contradict each other in the same scene. Maybe the November 28th date on her camera is correct, actually. It probably took Lois some time to hop around and interview everyone who knew Joe, so the Black Zero event could certainly be a few months later. It makes enough sense to me. For the moment, the other main timeline takeaway from this movie is the ages of the Waynes and the date of their murder, which wrap around into how old Ben Affleck is too. The parents' headstones show us their birth years and mark their deaths in 1981. In the initial opening scene when Maggie and Negan get shot, the theater marquee says the movie Excalibur is opening that coming Wednesday. While Excalibur premiered on a Friday in real life, we can still assume the month and year are correct, April 1981. And later, Scar from the Lion King muses,
"Since the age of 7, you have been to the art of deception as Mozart to the harpsichord."
So if Ben Affleck was 7 when his parents were killed, that puts his birth year in roughly 1974. What grosses me out the most about this is not only is this guy only 9 years older than me here, but Ben Affleck, like the real Ben Affleck, it's not a joke this time, was only 2 years older than that when he filmed the movie. Am I old? I can't be old, check out this hair. Batman v Superman is also really fond of being like, is there a computer screen in this shot? Put some timeline shit on it. We know when this security cam footage was taken, we know when Wonder Woman took a Comic-Con photo with Captain Kirk, we know when Mark Zuckerberg created his secret superhero folders, we even know the birth date and driver's license issue and expiration of the evil Russian dude who would have maybe become KG Beast had Batman not cooked him like a November ham. Throughout, we also find out Batman's been operating in Gotham City for 20 years, so since about 1995. He probably saw Batman Forever and was like, hey, that's a good idea. And of course, we get our first little taste of the nightmare prophesied future when Ben Affleck dreams about Superman being evil and big demon bug monsters everywhere, whenever this is meant to happen. Or it never will, or whatever. BVS, of course, dragged along a few promotional tie-ins as well, like these Warner Brothers and General Mills comics, all little filler stories that take place between MOS and BVS. There was also a double-sided guide to the main characters, which informed us about the founding of LexCorp, and this book, an original story called Crossfire that quickly tells us it takes place less than 2 weeks after Man of Steel. And then there's this little son of a bitch. Timeout shortlists are these little books you can get on various sightseeing or vacation spots in the real world, the best restaurants or coolest views or whatever. They made ones for Gotham and Metropolis to tie into Batman v Superman, and holy balls, Batman, shortlist is an understatement. I'm not going to go over it all, but we get an absolute truckload of dates for the establishment of businesses, a few historical facts, and then like 1,000 upcoming events in both locations. Music festivals and comedy shows and marathons and blah 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 blah. There is way too much. And the saddest part is most of this stuff is dated 2016 as if it's next year's events. But since we get the world-shattering death of Superman, not to mention a cataclysmic meta brawl with a big gray alien cave troll before most of those scheduled events, who knows if they went on to actually happen or got canceled or rescheduled. Well, maybe it's not that sad. It means I don't gotta put all that shit in the timeline. I think I'll stick with the interesting bits it gives us about the DCEU, like how in 2000, Alexander Luthor Sr. died unexpectedly. It was this guy. Or how Wayne Enterprises was built in the 1800s, or how, god damn it, Kryptonian attack on Metropolis in 2013? Really? Here, don't fail me now. Were the folks writing these random little guidebooks and newspapers and whatever just like, oh, 2013 was when Man of Steel came out, that must be when it takes place? If you wrote the Timeout Shortlist BVS book, f*** you. I'm sorry, I'm sure you're a very sweet person. I don't mean that. They probably just didn't pay you enough. But with all that added in, here's our updated surface level timeline, Man of Steel and Batman v Superman. So that's it. We're timelining some kind of... We are 100% after Superman is dead, because this dude is like, hey, Superman is dead, wanna buy a t-shirt? So we're in super late 2015 at the earliest. We truck through pretty much the entire movie before we get a very good, very obvious clue in the train station before the final boss battle. A blinking, half-destroyed sign that reads June 3rd, 2016. Nice. Now we know it's been at least a day since Spiky Dude attacked the train station, so I'm just gonna round this one off to early June 2016. Case closed. And yet, Amanda Waller plops down a big book of case files on every bad guy, and we get all sorts of birthdays, arrest dates, and other sprinkles of info. And wouldn't you know it, Deadshot is listed as having been arrested as late as June 8th, and the dossier files themselves have been finalized on June 15th. Now, maybe you could explain away the binder itself as being dated forward like a car, like intended to be viewed on the 15th, but we're not to the 15th yet? But I doubt it. And then you still have the Deadshot thing, and... Look, I'm just gonna shift us a little to mid-June 2016, and then we can assume, nay, hope, that the glitchy train station sign is just glitching some other recent day, I guess. God, these movies so far have been very, hey, it's this day, all good, bro? And then they turn around and go, psst, I actually f***ed you over right over here if you want to take a look. I told you, this thing is not as easy as you thought it was. We learn in Enchantress's little video game freeze frame that she's 6,373 years old, so born in roughly the 4350s BC. June Moon was also found in the spooky cave in 2015 and arrested in 2016. And later on in the movie, when we hear El Diablo's heartbreaking tale of accidentally killing his family, or Thanos snapped them, I don't know, his wife throws down a newspaper that we can pause on a dime and see is dated June 11th, 2015. Roughly a year before the movie. We get several flashbacks to Jared Leto and Harley Quinn, but nobody ever says how long ago this was, or what year it was, or anything, so we can't date it, and I hate it. Now with this movie in particular, because it tried way too hard to ride the coattails of Guardians of the Galaxy by shoving in a rock or pop song every other minute, I think it's a perfect time to give you all a little motion picture history 101. In a movie, there's a difference between types of sound. Diegetic, stuff the characters can actually hear, and non-diegetic, stuff they can't, only we, the audience, can hear it. So all the You Don't Own Me's and Fortunate Sons that act as soundtrack music, They're non-diegetic. We don't gotta count them as timeline clues, thank God. But your Tech 9 music video on Crocs TV, your Skrillex in the bar, diegetic. Going on the DCEU calendar, my good friend. Come to think of it though, Jared Leto played Joker in the music video for that Skrillex song, and that came out a month or so after the movie's supposed to be taking place. Did Joker nab the bar owner an advance copy? Oh, that's too much for me. My brain is actually experiencing physical pain. I think I'm just gonna crack open the novelization and wow, why are there like Tolkien-level descriptions in this thing? Jesus Christ! Nearly every character, down to random soldiers, and every building gets dated. Thanks, I guess. There's also lots of pop culture references, so now we know everything from Looney Tunes to Star Wars to Harry Potter to G.I. Joe to I Dream of Jeannie exist as fictional franchises within this fictional franchise. And definitely in the DCEU tradition, Suicide Squad gets a prequel comic, and you can bet your ass it comes before the movie, I'll tell you what. This really cool, thick-ass book full of behind-the-scenes info gives us close-up looks at all the bad guy files. But we can't just get what we want, right? They have to have birthdays and arrest dates that contradict the movie on almost every page, right? Why wouldn't they? Clearly the ones we see in the movie are the real dates. But in the cases of Killer Croc and Slipknot, whose files we didn't see in the movie, it's a nice little after-dinner mint. And then we come to the final piece of Suicide Squad material, Secret Files of the Suicide Squad. This was an exclusive graphic novel that you could only get packaged with the Blu-ray at Best Buy, and I certainly did not do that back in 2016, but when I go to try and buy one on eBay, they are going for way too much money. Nobody is gonna pay that, so secret they stay. According to the DCEU wiki, even the comic has contradictions inside of itself, let alone its connection to the movie or anything else. Like every sentence has something just blatantly wrong, apparently. So, say it with me, not canon. Here's our updated timeline 3 movies in. I think I'm done with Suicide Squad forever now. Please let me stop thinking about Suicide Squad. Please let me move on to the movie where I get to look at Gal Gadot a bunch. This movie bookends shortly after BVS, though the majority, of course, takes place at the tail end of World War I, rooting itself in real-world history. Well, close enough anyway. The presumed big bad, Ludendorff, who she brutally murders? Yeah, he lived for much, much longer in our timeline, but he did a big assist to the Nazi Party and was overall a pretty bad dude, so maybe it's for the best that he got killed off early in this World War I reimagining. Per Batman v Superman, we know this photo was taken in November of 1918, and the armistice with Germany that ended the real World War I gets brought up a million times as being the next day or within 24 hours and so on, and then actually happens by the end of the movie. So we can assume the film's main story ends on November 11th, 1918, Armistice Day, and takes place over the few days preceding. Easy peasy. Oh, there's no gotcha coming. This one actually is pretty easy. We do see Wonder Woman both as a child and as a preteen or teenager training on Themyscira, but sadly we don't find out how old she is. And we get our first glimpse into the history of the ancient Greek gods as told to Diana by Hippolyta. That's her mom. That's her mom's name. The gods created man, Ares made man do some war, Zeus created hot ladies to make them not do that anymore, then man enslaved those ladies because man sucks. The gods tried to help, but Ares killed them all except Zeus, who then beat him up and then made the God Killer, which we think is a sword the whole movie, but is actually Wonder Woman.
What a twist!
All of this was
long ago, when time was new, and all of history was still a dream.
The damn hell does that mean? Wonder Woman got 2 novelizations, a big boy one and a little boy one. I do own both of them, but I forgot to bring them up here with me, and I'm not going back down the trail to get them. I'm sweaty. The junior novel tells us Diana was 8 and 12 in these flashbacks, thank you, though it also completely skips the death of Antiope and the entire ending with Ares. I was pleasantly surprised to see Steve Corte wrote this adaptation, because I was already chatting with him for another upcoming video. Stay tuned. He basically told me that since this was released for the kiddos before the movie actually came out, they couldn't reveal some of the big moments. So lucky enough, we can just discount it and instead take the grown-up version as canon, which tells us her ages are 8 and 15 by mortal count. Now, this is an interesting distinction to make because it's implied in various movies that Diana is hundreds, thousands of years old. So does she age at the same rate as a normal human, but stop when she gets to Gal Gadot age and stay that forever? Other Amazons look older, but Diana was created completely differently, like with sex and stuff, so it's forbidden apples and oranges. Does she age from 0 to Gal Gadot over thousands of years, like really, really slowly? Was she a little kid for thousands of years and then aged into Gal Gadot? Am I saying Gal Gadot correctly? In Golden Age comics, the Amazons aged normally, but were always drinking from
the Eternal Youth Spa,
so long as they never left the island. So, oops! Was that the Baja Blast that Steve Trevor was naked in? Do they drink that? We may never know. What I do know is that we also get this fun little epilogue short, one you don't have to keep a secret, called Edda's Mission, which is like 2 minutes long and shows Etta Candy and the newly christened Wonder Men looking through some files that reveal a mother box. In these 2 little minutes, we hear the war is over and...
Get out, lads! Twice in 3 weeks!
So this is within 3 weeks after the film, and we learn that the mother box was discovered after the bombings in Liege, which happened on August 6th, 1914. Thanks, tiny random DVD special feature. And I can't believe I'm saying this, but that's it. Wonder Woman has been timelined, timelinified. Look at it, bask in it, take it in. Let's move on to the next thing. What is the next thing? Oh, man. You may be wondering why I'm covering this masterpiece instead of the Snyder Cut. And, well, in case you missed this little nugget floating around the web a couple years ago, Zack Snyder has said that Warner Brothers consider the theatrical cut as canon to their DC universe that they want to build out, and that my version will always be like this outworld, non-canon version. So even though... No opinions, only the timeline, I gotta ignore that one and focus on Justice League, I guess. I'll tell you right off the bat, man, this movie gives us almost no clues as to when it takes place. We know it's after Suicide Squad because that movie's post-credits showed Amanda Waller giving Ben Affleck files on the Justice Leaguers he's looking for. And of course, Superman is still dead as a Kryptonian doornail until the League toss a coin to their Witcher. One clue we do get is in the second favorite chair scene, where a K-pop song that didn't come out till August 2017 is playing in Barry's Squat. They call it Barry's Squat in the behind-the-scenes book. That's the official name. Granted, this was changed from the original skull art that was in the trailer for some reason, but it's something. Then at the very end of the movie, Barry slams his job acceptance letter onto the glass, and we can just barely make out August something 2017 as well. 2nd? 20th? 28th? Kill me. So August 2017 is my current guesstimation. A big takeaway from this movie is the Age of Heroes flashback we get, where men, Atlanteans, Amazons, Greek gods, and even a Green Lantern are fighting the forces of Apocalypse. The planet, not the guy. Hippolyta says the mother box has
slept for thousands of years.
Which is hilariously vague, but soon after, Menelipe is like,
fire has not burned for 5,000 years.
When referring to their ancient times invasion warning. So we can guess the last time this happened was when Steppenwolf attacked, and therefore placed the Lord of the Rings scene in roughly the 3000s BC. Wait, Enchantress was born way before that. Why didn't she help out? What an asshole. One other thing of note we hear is when Scar mentions that Barry Allen's mother was killed when he was 9. Cyborg changes a military ID to reflect Barry's face later on, but the file still belongs to whoever Wesley Rowe is, and that person is apparently a 7-year-old, so...
Okay.
But on that subject, here in this coffee table art book for Justice League, we get two ID cards for Barry Allen. One that says May 2nd, 1983, and another that says September 30th, 1992, meaning his mom died in either 1992 or 2001, depending on which one's the real deal. Since I know the Flash movie is going to have a lot to do with this, I'm just going to hold off on it for a bit and we can catch back up toward the end. There's some funny little comics that came paired with JL, this time pretty blatant product placements for Mercedes-Benz, as if the movie itself wasn't already blatant enough, almost all of which must take place after the movie since the Leaguers are working together, except for issue number 3, which sees Barry and Ben inside the exact same car in the exact same clothes with the exact same pizza as in the movie. So I guess after
I'm rich,
they drove off and helped a produce truck or whatever's going on here. Check and check. Timeline combo time.
James, listen to me now. It's Snyder, Zack Snyder. He's the key. You were right about the Snyder Cut. You've always been right about the Snyder Cut. Timeline it, James. Timeline it. You have to timeline it.
I wonder what that was all about. Oh well, here's our combined timeline up through Justice League. We're about halfway through all these movies in one TV show, so since I know you gotta pee and fill up your snacks or whatever, let's take a brief intermission.
Turkish Airlines is pleased to announce a new destination, Gotham City.
Thanks to a significant grant.
you've been a real good sport so far. This is a lot. Now that we're past the Justice League movie and everything else is a bit more standalone film and one television program, I think we can pick up the pace a little bit. Like The Flash. You deserve it. In literally the final shot of Aquaman, Black Manta throws a knife at a newspaper dated March 16th, 2017. But we know Aquaman is after Justice League because Mira mentions Steppenwolf. The real cream of the crop is so hidden I didn't even notice it on my first round of note-taking. After Orm sends a big tidal wave to hit Aquaman's dad truck, TV news clips pop up and we see a Japanese report dated June 1st. Yes, that's what those symbols mean. So since the latest year we see is 2017, I'm calling this movie late May to early June 2018. All right. We also see that it's 1985 when Boba Fett saves Satine by his lighthouse, and the passage of time and pregnancy would lead to a 1986 birth year for Aquaman. Which is so funny because the papers Ben Affleck got from Waller say his birthday is January 29th, 1979. Guess the government had bad info on the fish boy who's only been caught on camera one time, but come on!
It's Fishman.
Aquaman's mommy is sacrificed to the trench 20 years ago, but of course survives and lives in the land that time forgot for a while. Roughly 1998 when she got there. So I suppose it took Atlantis a few years to go, oh, you did have a baby with Boba Fett, didn't you? To death with you then! Only other big thing is another ancient times flashback showing Atlantis sinking beneath the waves, but we don't hear when this was. All we can guess is that it was after the 3000s BC because Atlantis hasn't sunk yet when they're all fighting Steppenwolf, and Green Goblin says it was at a time when the rest of the world still thought the Earth was flat. But if some people don't still think that, so I don't know. The junior novel puts ages on the kid flashbacks and therefore years by extraction. Arthur's Guide to Atlantis is just some scholastic book fair nonsense with a few references to old-timey underwater town. And Undertow is a book about Kid Aquaman's paper route and how he met the octopus from the comics that milked a cow and shot 4 bows and arrows at once. Wait, apparently this is supposed to be the same octopus, so after he was childhood friends with Aquaman, he said, "Peace out, I'm gonna play drums for your evil brother."
It's treason, then.
New timeline. Man of Steel through Aquaman is looking mighty fine. It's almost getting too small to read. Isn't that cool? Hey, shut the f*** up! I'm gonna cut right to the chase.
Today is December 8th.
Yeah, it is. Billy and Freddy upload some YouTube videos of superpower tests that are dated December 9th and 10th, 2018. David F. Sandberg, you beautiful, beautiful man. The wizard Shazam tells Billy about the Council of Wizards choosing a champion poorly, which was Black Adam. What a spicy teaser, as well as the 7 deadly sins getting set free, and this was long ago. What a spicy pile of shit. The opening Kid Savannah scene tells us it's in 1974, around Christmas.
But it's Christmas.
See? And along the way, we find out Billy Batson is 14, was 3 when his parents divorced, was 5 when he lost his mom at the carnival, and she was 17 when that happened. The junior novel expands the timeline by telling us that Savannah was 9 in 1974, therefore born in 1965, and that his shitty older brother is 50-ish in present day, and his dad's about 80. Look, I was gonna continue my purposely wrong names joke, but calling the Savannahs Sinestro and Lionel Luthor just felt way too confusing, so you're welcome for me not doing that. And the book rephrases the wizard Shazam's long ago to countless years ago, which is still not helpful. I want to count them. Then we've got Freddy's Guide to Superheroing, the Shazam movie's Scholastic Book Fair entry, which tells us basically nothing except that the Kryptonian attack on Metropolis was a few years back, so thank Zeus it didn't say 2013. Last, we've got this weird little motion comic called Superhero Hooky, which takes place nebulously after the movie because all the kids have Shazam powers. Shazam is in the bag, baby. Make my timelines grow! I should mention at the end of all of this, I want to comb through and see if I can find some fun nuggets of overlap, because I've already noticed that Aquaman's mom is sacrificed to the trench around the same time that little kid Aquaman tapes the Blob off TV, and there's gotta be more fun stuff like that. There's no timeline clues in this movie, dude. There's nothing. We only know it's after Suicide Squad because Harley and Joker have broken up, but that was years ago at this point. Damn it. And right after we had all this great timeline stuff in Shazam. Why? In Birds of Prey, we get plenty of mentions of how long ago stuff happened, like it being 100 years since this mob boss dude's mob first showed up in Gotham, or 15 years since Huntress's family was killed, or 10 years since Roberta Colindres got stuck at detective level because her partner took all the credit for a big dope police case. But amounts ago, from when, movie? From when? This is the only movie where I started to cross into maybe it happens when it came out territory, but no, Zod, you won't win. Eventually, I wound up caving and going to the DCEU wiki, which I've been trying not to do. I don't need help. I can fix the barbecue by myself, Dad. And even they, the masters of all DC Extended Universe knowledge, have no fucking clue. The only thing anyone's been able to guess about this has been the fact that Huntress's motorcycle is a 2020 Triumph Street Triple RS, apparently, manufactured starting in November 2019. So assuming that applies to this movie universe as well, then judging by how this appears to be a very sunny, sweaty movie, it could be summertime and therefore summer 2020. Look at me. Look into my eyes. I hate this. I hate playing these little guessing games. I want to know for sure. Where David F. Sandberg saved me, Kathy Yon, you have failed this timeline. All right, that's a little morbid. I'm just miffed about this one, okay? At least both of the diegetic songs that play in Black Mask's Club came out before summer 2020. They actually came out on the Birds of Prey soundtrack. I don't know what's real anymore. But Black Mask's car tags expire in May, and even though he's a bad guy and probably never pays to update his registration, I'm gonna call this shit. It's May 2020, close enough to summer. Nobody can tell me that I'm wrong because nobody can be right. So here's good old bop amidst everything else. And from knowing Harley's birthday in Suicide Squad, we can roughly date these cool little Shane Glines cartoon vignettes from while she's growing up. Which is neat, because she's gotta be in college long enough to get a PhD, but her Suicide Squad rap sheet lists a few arrests from before she'd likely have graduated. At least they're only for assaulting an officer and breaking and entering, but these people really don't think these things through, do they? On the other hand, the Janus Corporation shows up in Birds of Prey, and that name was on a building during the opening scene of Justice League where Batman stops the guy from Mindhunter from burglarizing someone. Do they actually think these things through after all? Nah. It's in 1984. 4th of July and the surrounding days. Ends around Christmas time. Okay, one thing that does annoy me is that this group of kids walks by wearing punk rock gear, and one of them's wearing a shirt of the album cover for Cro-Mag's The Age of Quarrel, which came out in 1986. And this kid in the mall at the start is playing Operation Wolf, which didn't come out until 1987. Why would you do that, set designers? You knew the title of the movie, I know you knew! But since the president here isn't Ronald Reagan, and like, as far as we know, Wonder Woman doesn't exist in real life, and for a billion other reasons, this is a different timeline than our own. I guess here, these things came out pre-1984. They had to have. Also, you're telling me nobody in any other movie remembers back in 84 when everyone on the planet made and unmade magical wishes? You just know little 10-year-old Ben Affleck wished for his parents to come back to life. Look, I know I said I wouldn't say anything, but this movie blows. The big mystery I faced with WW84 is its opening Amazon Games scene on Themyscira. Because, look, Kid Diana is played by the same young actress as when she was 8 years old in the first movie. Obviously, that actress has gotten a little bit older, but because they didn't use the other girl, I originally put this sometime between the 8-year-old and 15-year-old Diana scenes. Then I realized, wait, that doesn't make sense, because her mom is like super okay with her participating in the games, but she was so mad at her doing anything dangerous until she commanded Antiope to train her in this scene with this other child actress, so I moved it to after both of those. But then, are you sitting down for this? I noticed Antiope's shoulder. Wait, no, where are you going? She's got a relatively fresh cut on her upper arm here in Wonder Woman 84. And I thought to myself, there's no way they'd track the trajectory of Antiope's arm wound continuity. But they did. They tracked the trajectory of Antiope's arm wound continuity. It's a full-on healed-up scar in the first Wonder Woman movie. So the sequel's Amazon game sequence comes before both of those little kid Diana scenes from the first movie. I guess Hippolyta decided after the games that Diana should stop doing things that might kill her.
No sharp juice.
And therefore, Diana is even younger than the younger version of herself from the first movie. She drank the sweaty Mountain Dew. I don't make the rules, okay? The shoulder does. The Junior novel doesn't tell us anything new, and this movie also had a prequel comic. It's shortly before the movie, what a surprise! And we got a bizarre tie-in comic co-starring Serena Williams, who's Wonder Woman in an alternate dimension. It's not the 80s, so it's just sometime between BVS and when Serena Williams quit playing tennis in September 2022. Or it's not canon, I don't know.
Look, I know in the press they said it wasn't exactly a sequel, but it's still weird they went from Wonder Woman 1 to Wonder Woman 1984, you know what I'm saying?
Brother, this guy stinks!
Your name is Letters? All names are letters, dickhead.
Anymore. It's not fair. Why give me dozens of dates and passages of time and yada 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 and then just stop? Cold turkey!
The Suicide Squad starts off fairly strong. Everyone's placing their bets on who's gonna die during the mission, and we get ages for a lot of the squad members. It's great! There's no birth dates, just ages, but it's great! Most of these characters die in the next 5 minutes, but it's great! As long as we can figure out what year this movie takes place. Not here. Nothing here. No. No. Oh my God, there is nothing. At a certain point, I think starting with this movie, it's like they knew I was looking for timeline clues and just stopped putting them in. Now computer screens have just random gibberish and unrelated time codes. Papers are obscured or too out of focus to read. Nothing is actually useful. You know what you're doing. I see you.
Been the primary focus of my experiments here for the past 30 years.
Yeah, but like 30 years rewound from when?
I've been working with the Beast for 30 years.
Yeah, but from when?
30 years he's kept me here.
Yeah, from when?
They're gonna destroy 30 years worth of efforts.
I hate this, I hate this, I hate this, I hate this. Do a DCEU timeline video, I said. It'll be really fun, I told myself. There's no possible way that these movies that are so loosely connected and barely limp past the studio's sticky fingers will have any problem being puzzle pieced together. Oh my God, there's a 2020 calendar in this office. It's so small, it's so stupid, but it's there. Jesus Christ, it's in 2020. It's gotta be, right? Are you kidding me, James Gunn? You say it takes place the year it came out? That was 2021. Why would you do this to me? I think I need to rewatch the scene where Harley takes out her torturer because it feels pretty relatable. I did not see this before. How would I have noticed this? Holy sh**. In the stupidest, nearly blown out font, we see this dude is texting someone on lunes 17 de agosto de 2020. Monday, August 17th, 2020. Take that, James Gunn. You're watching this, right? So with that in mind, we can reverse the funny 30 years back to 1990. They say 30 so many times so blatantly that it's gotta be exactly 30 years. But when Thinker reveals Starro's origin, he says the Cold War had already ended, which debatably happened anywhere between 1989, when Bush and Gorbachev decided
the Cold War's over,
anywhere up to December 1991, when the Soviet Union dissolved. I'm just gonna say 1990. If Operation Wolf can come out 3 years earlier, the Cold War can be over by 1990. It's fine, take it up with the shoulder. Peacemaker calls Ratcatcher 2 a millennial, so we can guess she was born between 1981 and 1996, and we know in roughly late 1945, right after World War II, a group of Nazis retreated to Corto Maltese and built Jotunheim, the big tower where Starro lives. So now we've got this monstrosity of a timeline combo platter. Zack Snyder's gritty take on Superman all the way through Rats vs. Starfish from the guy who wrote the live-action Scooby-Doo. We're so close, folks. I can almost taste the Flash. Wait. Did you know that there was one single solitary TV show among all these movies? It's true. It's just so weird that they would make an entire series where you can't even see the main character. Peacemaker is 8 episodes long, but in that time, the majority of timeline clues we get come in the form of pop culture references. Albums lying around are being played, bands on t-shirts, movies and shows being discussed by name, and especially all the celebrities Peacemaker rattles off as possible scapegoats in the 5th episode. That episode alone took up 3.5 Google Doc pages to keep track of. But since none of these have any actual bearing on the show itself, since they're almost all 80s or 90s references, I'm just gonna put them all on screen for you now. Check it out, take it in, comment below if you think I missed something. I probably did, there's just so much, and now it's in the timeline. Let's talk about what actually matters for locking in this show. The whole series takes place over the course of 7 days. Episode 1, we find out Peacemaker was in his The Suicide Squad post-credits hospital bed for like 5 months. So we're starting off in January of 2021. We also find out he was in jail for 4 years prior to that movie, so imprisoned in 2016. I'm gonna guess shortly after the events of the first Suicide Squad movie, or else maybe they'd have used him to help fight Cara Delevingne. In Episode 2, Terminator 2 Terminator confirms it's winter. Episode 4 gives us Vigilante's exact birthday, June 30th, 1991. Making him 29. In Episode 5, Peacemaker says he fought a gorilla at Burning Man 4 years ago, so in 2017. Burning Man typically happens in the crossover from August to September, so it's very possible this was happening around the same time the Justice League was fighting Steppenwolf, and that the government discovered the bad guys of this show, the Butterflies, a year ago, so sometime in 2020. Episode 6's opening show and tell scene indicates Peacemaker may be this little girl's real father, having last seen her mom 10 years ago, so roughly 2011. And the penultimate episode has KKK Dad tell us that Peacemaker was born
40 years ago,
aka about 1981. Which also makes you a millennial, buddy. We see a lot of glimpses of Peacemaker accidentally killing his brother when they were kids, but we don't get many clues for what year it is. Home Sweet Home by Motley Crue is playing, which came out in September '85, so it could be sometime around then, but Exhibit Wonder Woman 84, 80s music can't be trusted, and little Peacemaker looks older than 4 or 5 to me, so probably more likely the early 90s. The other main conundrum in this show is during Episode 5's rapid-fire name drop session.
Conan's not really doing much right now.
Referring to Conan O'Brien leaving his talk show, which happened in real life on June 24th, 2021, which would be months after this episode. And also, unfortunately,
Bill Cosby, he just got out, he's got time on his hands.
The real Cosby was released from jail on June 30th, 2021. Vigilante's 30th birthday. But I'm sure these were ad-libs, and the show was likely filmed around that time, and I guess instead of shifting the entire thing over just because of a couple of flyby references, I'm gonna cite Wonder Woman 84 v pop culture again and say that in the DCEU, Conan moved on earlier and Bill Cosby got out earlier, somehow.
And I looked at it, and it wasn't getting any better.
At least we can take comfort in knowing that George Carlin and Amy Winehouse also died in this universe. The other thing is that Vigilante wants cable because
Fargo's on tonight.
Fargo ran from April 2014 to November 2020. So if the show's making Cosby references and thinks it's in the middle of 2021, why in the world does it also think that Fargo is still on? Maybe Vigilante is catching up, or he missed an episode, or he just watches reruns no matter what, he can't miss it, he's weird like that, I don't know. I just know that Ewan McGregor, Patrick Wilson, and Mary Elizabeth Winstead are all in Fargo, and that's pretty funny. But the most hilarious arbitrary pull to me in this show is this barely noticeable poster in the video store. Like pretty much every movie or poster we see in this place is made up, thank granny goodness. But when I look up this Juicebringer Night poster, turns out it was an anime-style spoof on Gabe, the main character of the Penny Arcade webcomic, and this poster was made for SakuraCon 2009. That's right.
Garuga mess! Hey, gaming!
Peacemaker canonizing that commercial existing within the same universe as Batman v Superman earns it several extra points. And with that, Peacemaker joins the timeline fold. We've got 2 more films to go before we get to the most recent and final DCEU movie. So now, on to another DC project starring a pro wrestler. Look, I couldn't find anywhere in town that even slightly resembled the fictional Middle Eastern country that this entire movie takes place in, so I'm just gonna green screen myself into Black Adam. No, Black Adam? Black Adam? close enough. Wouldn't you know it, this movie too absolutely sucks at telling us when it's happening. Cyclone's birthday is displayed on Hawkman's entry gate, which is nice, but that tells us nothing about when the actual movie is. It might be after Peacemaker, because Harcourt from that show appears when the Justice Society delivers Black Adam. Oh yeah, the Justice Society exists, that's a thing. While Black Adam is lacking in exact timeline clues, it does expand the DCEU's world in several ways. You might say the hierarchy of the DCU. The Justice Society has apparently just been a thing this whole time, especially when you take the prequel comics into consideration. Yes, there's prequel comics, 4 of them, one for each JS member. They're not the JSA here, not of America, but for some reason the Justice League is, make of that what you will. A vague amount of time ago, the JS was active as world-renowned superheroes, Hawkman, Dr. Fate, and Atom Smasher, at least. Normally the team's much bigger than that, and we do know Black Canary's mom also had screamy powers via Birds of Prey, but who knows, man. They broke up for some unknown reason, likely in the mid-2000s since Cyclone loved them as a kid, even though that makes it a little weird that the Fawn says he never knew Batman, but now they have to come back together to fight Maui. We get an exact on-screen year for all the ancient Kahndaq flashbacks, 2600 BC. This is when the Rock's kid becomes Shazam, then the Rock becomes Shazam, then Shazam Rock destroys the Evil King's palace and gets entombed by the Council of Wizards. Funny enough, we see that the Rock kills all of them except the wizard Shazam, but in the movie Shazam, we saw that the Rock destroying the palace released the 7 deadly sins, and we were told,
"My brothers and sisters were slain by the sins. Their thrones lie empty."
So for both scenarios to be true, I guess the sins were released on accident, off-screen when the palace exploded, and Black Adam just knocked out all the other wizards when he was being imprisoned. Then the sins killed them later on or something? I don't know. I don't think the Rock, the actual Rock, was really smelling what the Shazam movies were cooking, and it doesn't matter. Unfortunately, it seems the only way to work out the calendar placement for Black Adam is to sort of pinball it off the surrounding projects. In Peacemaker Episode 4, when Vigilante gets himself arrested, one of the policemen is reading a newspaper with an article titled "Intergang Seizes Control in Nation of Kahndaq." So since The Rock defeats Intergang within his movie, Black Adam is after Peacemaker after all, aka sometime after January 2021. Cool, good, great. There is the inexplicable appearance of several actual DC comic books that spill out of a backpack at one point, which took me way too long to identify and ultimately proved no point because the most recent one also released in January of 2021. So glad I spent so much time figuring out what the hell this comic was. But, you know, it would take some time for Harcourt to fully recover from her butterfly battle injuries, so I'm just gonna say Black Adam happens as early as maybe mid-2021. But whether or not it takes place before or after the next and second to last movie, Shazam Dose, remains to be seen. And seen very soon it shall be, because that's what we're moving on to right You gotta be kidding me. I was gonna film this on a baseball field. I've got a bat. It was gonna be a whole thing. By contrast, Shazam 2 Electric, You Get the Idea, gives us lots to work with. Throughout the movie, we get a bunch of cars with license plates issued 21 and expiring in 22, which is a fine starting point. However, when Freddy shows Anne his phone wallpaper, we see today is Monday, May 29th. Neither May 2021 nor 2022 had their 29th day on a Monday. But you know what did? May 2023. That's a month after the movie came out, but hey, what are you gonna do? So, it's settled. Yeah, I wish. See, the first contradiction to that is actually this Phillies baseball game that Pedro and Rosa are watching. There's a kick-ass TikToker called No Problem Gambler, whose whole shtick is figuring out the exact sports games we see in the backgrounds of shows and movies. After I chatted with him a bit, he uncovered that this game in reality was played on August 7th, 2021, which isn't May, and school is in session, so early August makes no sense, and even though this was such a cool find and I'm so mad it doesn't work, it just doesn't work at all. Luckily, Pedro is fawning over a Phillies team member who doesn't really exist, the same one we see for like one f***ing frame during the dragon fight, so this game is now fictional and can be on a completely different day and it's fine. It's fine! The other big stumbling block is, remember how in the first movie Billy Batson was 14 in December of 2018? Well, in this movie, he turns 18 in 5 months. Since he was
basically 15
in December, his birthday is probably within a couple months, like January or February, meaning that's when he'd turn 15. If he turns 15 in early 2019, then he'd turn 18 in early 2022. Reversing 5 months gets us to roughly fall of 2021 for this sequel movie, which isn't May. Let's pretend it is May 29th and Freddy's phone isn't broken. If Billy's birthday is in 5 months, then his birthday is in October. So he's wrong when he says he's basically 15 in the first movie and he's just rounding up for the sake of looking tougher in front of Savannah. But if he did just turn 14 in October 2018, then he turns 18 in October 2022, meaning we're in May 2022, right? Yeah, I think that works.
It's been 2 goddamn years!
For f***'s sake. Okay, so if Sinestro, I did it anyway, says it's been 2 years since the first wormy post-credit scene from the first Shazam movie, then presumably this means Shazam Zwei is in 2020, which doesn't make any sense, so I guess we reverse it? Say the second post-credits is in 2022 like the rest of the movie, and the first one is 2 years earlier in 2020? Does that work?
I'm 57 years old.
If he's 57 in 2022, then he'd be born in 1965, plus 9 is 1974. He was 9 in 1974. It all works. The first post-credits is in 2020. The second is in 2022. Late May 2022 for the movie. Boom and boom, baby. I swear, sometimes things just work out miraculously. Sandberg, you must have thought this one through, right? I think so, you old scoundrel. Billy says he's seen all of the Fast and Furious movies, which ironically feature Helen Mirren and Rock Johnson quite often. So all of those, up through F9, are going on the timeline now. The Wizard lore is expanded too. Now we know Shazam's staff was made for the Titan Atlas, and the Wizard stole it from him, then locked up all the gods in a big magic sphere forever. I guess that must have been after Ares killed all the gods except Zeus? Or before, and their battle happened inside the magic Shazam ball. But then how could Zeus make Themyscira and f*** Wonder Woman's mom without leaving the ball? I swear, sometimes things just work out horrifically, and since there's a mid-credits scene where Billy is approached by the Peacemaker supporting cast to be recruited into the JS Not A, this means it's after Black Adam, and therefore Black Adam is now officially sometime between mid-2021 and May 2022. Not great, but hey, it's better than nothing. We've almost wound up with nothing a couple of times now, and the fact we've managed to avoid it is exhilarating. I feel so alive. Are you shitting me? They killed the janitor from Peacemaker? Okay, f*** this movie. Holy shit, it's Zeta. Okay, f*** this movie. There's also 2 prequel comics, one that's full of stories that take place here and there between the first and second Shazam movies, one of which shows a Gotham Girls poster, see, this is a DCAU video, you fool, and one that's actually smack dab in the middle of the first movie, but it's full of continuity errors and contradictory dates, so it doesn't count and I'm throwing it in the trash. Huh? No, I paid like $10 for this thing. Holy magical balls, you guys. We're finally here. We're finally to the Flash. It's been a wild ride, but the time has come, the Jamie said, to talk of many things, of shoes and picks and callbacks, of 89 bat wings. You want to get nuts? Cool, me too. You may be wondering why I'm wearing a Superman cape now instead of for like Man of Steel or whatever. Well, it's because, as you can see quite clearly, this is a Supergirl cape. I never thought we'd get here. The promised day has come. Today, the Flash movie officially releases, and while I've been weirdly excited about it, I am hesitant to head out and pay money to see it for hopefully obvious reasons that I already said I wasn't going to bring up in this video. But look at where you are. This is the complete DCEU timeline video. I kind of have to go see the final chapter in this saga. Oh dear. That's not a lot of time. reusing the place I shot the Justice League segment. It's a square now. The Flash references 3 scenes from Zack Snyder's Justice League. These 3, none of which happened in the theatrical cut. You know, the canon one. Fucking hell. I'm gonna go through this real fast because I didn't think I'd have to go through it at all. The Snyder cut is essentially the same movie as the theatrical, but a lot longer. Shush. With several extra or different scenes, the timeline shared between the 2 versions is basically identical. Don't. And the Snyder Cut actually helpfully expands upon it all. See, where Justice League only gave us a couple of vague August clues, Zack Snyder's Justice League shows us a different look at the Parademon Witness sketch, which is dated July 23rd, 2017, and the movie continues on for a couple days after that, so late July 2017 for the Snyder Cut. And then Barry's job acceptance still says August whatever, so that moment is just a little bit later on. But what about the K-pop song playing in Barry's squat, you ask, clearly remembering that long ago in the video? Well, like I said back then, if you were paying attention, that's not what was originally on that screen. It was this animated skull thing. So if we pretend both versions of Justice League are the same movie for a second, then we can pull the Wonder Woman 84 card and not care about dates of music releases as timeline cinching. I think JL was the only movie I did that for, right? Come on, you expect me to remember everything I've said in this whole video? Get out of here. We also learn the birth years of Cyborg, his mother Eleanor, and even his father Silas. See? It says here it's 1957, and here that it's 1969. You remember the end of that SpongeBob episode where Squidward's nose pops off and he deflates like a balloon? We can also put on our Sherlock Holmes hats and deduce that because of Victor's gravestone and these handful of college sports dates on the wall behind him here, that his car accident occurred sometime in roughly spring or summer 2015. It has to be among these home game dates because that's what he was doing, and it has to be before Superman dies on November 12th because we see he's already Cyborg. The soundtrack for ZSJL labels the Age of Heroes flashback with 20 centuries of stony sleep, which is now with Darkseid. I don't know, it was one or the other, or both, or this never happened and everyone is lying. What a funny prank that would be. That equates to 2,000 years ago, which is roughly around the 0 area of the number line that we as a society have for some reason decided the time exists on. But we've already placed this apocalypse fight around the 3000s BC because the fire has not burned for 5,000 years. I tweeted at composer Tom Holkenborg, aka Junkie XL, asking if he came up with the track titles or Zack Snyder or what, but he never replied. What, Tom, do you have more important things to do or something? Damn it. Also, why Junkie XL? Again, any timeline stuff from either version of the movie can pretty much be applied to both versions, because the Snyder Cut is what the timeline was supposed to be in the first place, and Justice League doesn't have any major contradictions, other than there being people living in Pojarnov instead of not, Amber Heard not being British, Cyborg's dad not dying like the dude in Resident Evil, and Steppenwolf looking way stupider. This includes the Iris West scene because, hey, it was in the original trailers, and it certainly could have happened off screen, same with the Aquaman finger point. But the time travel part? I don't know, man. Joss Whedon Flash is busy pushing a family's pickup. Dostoevsky! And the team manages to get the mother boxes apart before they synchronize. Does the Flash retcon the entire DCEU timeline post-JL to shove the Snyder Cut in there instead of the theatrical one? I guess, but I really don't know. At this point, if you're doing a watch-through, I think you can just pretty much pick your favorite and turn your brain off. Easier said than done, I understand. The Flash movie doesn't tell us. But what it does tell us is a bunch of stuff I feverishly scribbled down after getting out of the theater. Okay, no more pulling fast ones on ya. This is it. This is the final DCEU movie we have to timeline. The Flash. It's all come down to this. 10 years of in and out cast members, announcements and cancellations of dozens of movies, pure deletions of others, and an entire Flash TV show come and gone. We're finally here. It's time to timeline The Flash. So there's 2 timelines. The present day, where we see the Justice League taking care of a robbery/baby shower in broad daylight Gotham City, is at the very least happening after the events of Peacemaker. Because at the end of that show, the League popped in and Barry was still wearing his suit from Justice League. Either Justice League, whatever. Now he's got a new suit, and so does Batman, which has given me trypophobia. The Iris Snyder Cut callback tells us we're a few years after that movie, but so was Peacemaker, so Okay. Then Barry figures out he can go back in time, and does so that's all we get. Luckily, one of the first things that happens when Barry falls out of the time bubble is he sits down to dinner with his parents and asks them what they've been doing for the last 18 years. Barry, at this moment, doesn't realize he's not back in his present day. He hasn't met his younger self yet, his dad hasn't asked about school yet, he doesn't have any reason to believe it's not the same year he originally left, so his 18 years question would reflect that. A second ago, when Barry was time traveling, his mom's gravestone, which also nicely tells us she was born in 1970, says she died in 2004. And at the end of the movie, we see on security camera footage that the exact day was June 13th, 2004. 2004 plus 18? 2022 for the opening scenes. When in 2022? We don't know. But I'm gonna guess after the events of Shazam, the second Shazam, because so far every movie has been one right after the other, except for the one with 1984 in the title, Por Supuesto. I might be able to tell you if I can see what's written on these babies' info cards, but I can really only make out that it's a hefty month name, like September or December maybe. The movie was gonna come out in November 2022 for a second there. Is late 2022 satisfactory? When Barry does realize he's come back too early, he interrogates his younger self, who tells him he's 18 years old. So since we know Nora Allen died in 2004, and we know from Justice League that Barry was 9 when that happened, we can rewind to get 1995 as his birth year, then push forward 18 years, Viola, future Barry popped out in 2013. But remember these opposing ID cards? They already gave us 2 different birth years for him, 1983 and 1992. I guess neither of them are right, and that's okay. Production art that didn't make it into the movie versus a movie all about this character that gives us actual years and birth dates, I think it's a pretty easy choice. We learn this exact day is September 29th. Old Barry recognizes this as the day he was struck by lightning and got super speed, so we can nicely plop that date into the main timeline as well. Yeah, I say main timeline because things aren't all how they're supposed to be. Eric Stoltz is in Back to the Future instead of Michael J. Fox, who's in Footloose instead of Kevin Bacon, who's in Top Gun instead of Tom Cruise. Michael Keaton is Batman instead of Ben Affleck, and none of the other Justice Leaguers ever got their powers or were even born. I wonder if The Flash is why Operation Wolf came out 3 years early. So while we can still attach September 29th, 2013 to regular Barry getting his powers because he says it's the same day, we can't do that with some of the other stuff we find out. Like our good old friend, the Black Zero event. The very next day in this messed up timeline, September 30th, Zod shows up, nearly identically to how he did in Man of Steel. Old Barry doesn't say, hey, that's weird, in my timeline that happened in November or maybe February of next year. But he does seem caught off guard by it, and later when Michael Keaton asks Barry if Zod's here because of him, he says, maybe, implying things are screwed up with the timing. Old Barry remembers back to the actual Black Zero event where he managed to save a kid and says he'd just gotten his powers. But if he did so in September and the attack was within the next few months, I'd still call that pretty recent. So we've got a year and a fiscal quarter for the present day normal timeline stuff, late 2022, and exact days for the not that long ago mess up timeline in 2022. I mean, 2013. Why did I write down 2022? They can't both be 2022. Barry's completely different ages and Zod's attacking and... Oh, yeah. The Tim Burton computer lists out several Clark Kents, giving us all their birth dates and ages. 1965 plus 57, that's 2022. 1961 plus 61, that's 2022. 1995 plus 26, hey, that's 2022. So we've got 2 options here. Either the VFX artist that created this list goofed or wasn't told what it was for, or the movie is telling us in its own weird little way that only an insane person would notice that Barry didn't actually travel back in time. He did return to the same year he left, but he f***ed up so hard that the timeline is that screwy. Now, the main thing making me lean toward it just being a production oversight is that Old Barry knows September 29th is when the lightning strikes, and then it does. I think it's one of those inevitable intersections the movie likes to bring up. So if we were in a different year and the movie wanted us to know that, you'd think they'd make it more obvious, a roadblock of some kind. The lightning doesn't strike. Instead, I think it's safe to say we're in the expected 2013 and the Bat computer is just a little bat behind on its Bat software Bat updates. Oh yeah. And there's a 3-issue prequel comic, because why wouldn't there be, which covers some of the span of time between Justice League and Flash, and pretty much only exists to explain why Barry can phase and how he got his costume. Ben Affleck and Scar made it for him. It also goes out of its way to show Barry learning how to create after images of himself and how to do a big ultrasonic super punch Musou, but he never does either of those in the movie, so I don't know why they did that. Oh, and since we're talking about the Flash, I might as well bring up this moment from the Arrowverse's Crisis on Infinite Earths crossover, where the CW Barry met the DCEU Barry, and...
also the Flash. The Flash? Flash.
So if we're gonna figure out when this moment happened from DCEU Barry's point of view, then it's time for the most important mystery of this whole thing. How long ago did he start calling himself The Flash? He's clearly using the name in his own movie. Thematically reversing time, there's a poster on Eugene's wall in the Shazamily Matters comic with the name The Flash on it. Amon asks The Rock,
"Sure you're fast, but how fast? Like Flash fast?"
And there's a Flash comic in his backpack, a Flash comic that came out in 2009, but it must have come out later in this universe because he didn't even have powers yet in 2009. And the earliest we get is...
Have you ever met the Flash?
Yeah, I met the Flash. Like everybody else has ever met him, I thought he was an unbearable D-bag.
So it could be as early as late 2019's poster to as late as January 2021's Kid Q&A. I guess we could meet in the middle and say 2020? What year did that CW crossover episode air? 2020? Cool. And that's pretty much it for The Flash. Bunch of pop culture references that we can't count because it's a different timeline. And we wrap up the movie with a big, haha, Batman is George Clooney now. And Barry tells a blackout drunk Aquaman that he had to keep resetting the timeline because he'd always wind up with a different Bruce Wayne. So I have to imagine he got Val Kilmer at some point and thanked him for inspiring Ben Affleck to put on the cape. And with that fantastically executed callback to a joke so long ago in the video that you don't even remember it, let's take a look at... No, the video's not starting over, don't worry. I'm gonna put the whole thing on screen. Well, not the whole thing, that's about 700 items long, just the important stuff. Here it is, folks.
Would you look at that? A little slice of heaven. If your idea of heaven is a barren, lifeless rock.
I've linked my spreadsheet of the entire timeline in the description below, but you're only allowed to access it if you've watched this whole video. The spreadsheet will know. Trust me. I'm certainly not the first person to attempt this mammoth task, and I bet you I won't be the last. So if anything in this video made you go, I don't know about that, beautiful, I welcome the conversation. Sant3D over at the DCEU wiki has his own timeline, which was a tremendous help when checking my work. And I gotta thank Xavier Mendoza for jumping in on Peacemaker notes for me. Class act that, Xavier. Thank you. Now let's move these cases to the right order. Here's some stuff we can now see happened pretty close to one another. I already mentioned the gorilla and Steppenwolf fights and Aquaman's mom's death sentence while her kid was up tape recording The Blob, but not KG Beast was born less than a month before Statler and Waldorf's first appearance on The Muppet Show, and then the Vietnam War ended the next month. Ace Chemicals and Arkham Asylum were built in the same year. Captain Boomerang was born the day before Super Mario Bros. Released. Iron Man by Sir Mix-a-Lot released the same month as this scene. Cyclone was born a month before Jonathan Kent's Sacrificial Twister. Wait, that is eerie. Bernie Sanders announced his campaign for president, and then El Diablo's family felt the burn a couple weeks later. This lady got her driver's license in the middle of Batman v Superman, and Superman's appearance on the Baby podcast wasn't too long before Cyborg and his mom got in a horrific car accident, and then Furious 7 came out. And laying everything out like this has learned me some actual world history as well. Like, did you know the pilot episode of Sesame Street aired the day after the moon landing? Or that The Wizard of Oz came out less than a week before World War II started? Mad Magazine introduced Alfred E. Newman the same month the first Godzilla movie came out, and Gremlins and Ghostbusters came out on the same day. Hey, old guys, which one did you go see that weekend, and do you regret your decision? Well, it's the end.
Wow, this has just been such a pleasure. I'm such a lucky boy. I can't wait to go home.
With James Gunn's new DC universe coming up and rebooting everything, this universe is essentially dead now.
This world must die.
But like Mary Marvel told Billy in Shazam the Squeakquel, nothing lasts forever. Maybe one day we'll get that prophesied Ayer cut of Suicide Squad. Maybe they could do more Snyderverse as comics or animated films. Maybe someone saved a copy of Batgirl, I f***ing pray. But I won't hold my breath. Cooler things have happened, but I would understand if WB wants the dead horse to finally rest.
No one likes to show off.
Unless what they're showing off is dope as f***.
The DCEU had a good run. Or at least it had a run. We don't know for sure if Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, which is set to come out in December, will be DCEU canon, part of the new James Gunn DCU, or some in-between headache. It's following up the events from the first movie with most of the cast returning, but the director just said the other day that it's very standalone. And the Blue Beetle movie, which will be out even sooner, has been reported by the director, "We are part of the plans that they have been creating for the future installments of the DCU, but we are not tied to all the films from the past," and has been said by James Gunn to be the first DCU character, but not the first DCU film. I don't know what the f that means. If it turns out one or both of them are just blatantly the actual DCEU finale past The Flash, I'll put their timeline info in a pinned comment down there once I figure it out. I ain't doing a whole nother video like this, screw that. I can't That's So Raven what comes next. I only know what I know right this second. And what I know is a gargantuanly larger amount of info about the DC Extended Universe than I ever wanted to know. Personally, I can't wait to see what the new DCU has in store. Bring it on. We'll get some returning actors, but in theory, everything will be micromanaged in a good way. We can only hope for the best. Like Cyborg's daddy said, the world's not fixed in the past, only the future. The not yet, the now.
All I can tell you is, there's still time to change the future. Ezio shit.
In fact, that's my question of the day. What's your biggest hope for the new universe of DC films and however many TV shows compared with the old? I want to see more ridiculous, colorful villains actually interacting with the heroes, not just standing on a boat or taking 2 post-credit scenes to do nothing. But what about you?
What do you think?
And because I said I would, and you've been such a patient database, here's my personal ranking for the DCEU. I'll admit, I really like a few of these films, and it's okay if you do or don't. Just don't go harassing people for thinking differently. Clearly, I don't really like a few of them either.
It's all art. That's just a trash can.
It's just a trash can. Yeah.
But I absolutely love a lot of the cinematography in these things. Beautiful shots all over the place. And the BVS warehouse fight, sometimes I just watch that for fun and pretend it's inside a better movie. And take a listen to how glorious some of the soundtracks are. I had the Black Adam score on for the entire time I was working on VFX for our big cinematic videos last year. It's sick.
We want what we want! Just like you did!
And we gotta give the existence of these movies some credit. The first time Batman and Superman shared the silver screen, just like I Am Legend predicted. The first Justice League movie. The first Wonder Woman movie. 2 of them, in fact. We got a movie with the Justice Society, Huntress, Black Canary, Bloodsport, Ocean Master, Doomsday, Darkseid, Peacemaker? Who asked for Peacemaker? Besides us several years ago when we put Peacemaker in our webcomic, Legacies of the DC Animated Universe. Visit legacesdcau.com. You know I'm a DC Animated Universe fan first and foremost, but you can and should like multiple things. There's many different ways to adapt fictional characters. Somebody made them up and now a different somebody is making them do something else. Even the most outlandish choices the DCEU made are at least interesting because of how fucking crazy those choices are. But I get it. Some of these movies, I hope I never have to watch again. Others, I may just pop in the Blu-ray right now. It's the end of an era, but it's also the end of this video. So in the immortal words of one William Martin Joel, I don't care what you say anymore. This is my life. Go ahead with your own life. Leave me alone. Good night, everybody.